one of the strong defenses that apologists for the Democratic Party and apologists for Kamala Harris have made is that she was up against all this, money and this influence from the right. So the Atlantic, a neoliberal rag, has this headline, Why Democrats Are Losing the Culture War. The booming right-wing influencer ecosystem helped re-elect Trump. And the other side may not have an answer. So I read that and I was like, really? Because, so much of the influence of influencers is sort of self-chosen, right? Like you watch videos from people that you like who say what you want to hear. So the influencers who are talking to the other side, you don't know about. So I'm like, really? Who are all these influencers out there who are pushing people to vote for Trump? Who were they? Because I didn't see them out there. So I looked and I did some Googling, and honestly, I couldn't find very many other stories. That was the only one, that one headline. But I've heard this. I've seen memes on social media that say that it was the influencer's fault. It's Joe Rogan's fault. We'll talk about Joe Rogan in a moment. He probably is the most influential political podcaster, I'd say. So is that the reason? Is it not because of democratic policies? Is it not because they were fully in on the Israeli genocide? Because that's what I would say. I would say it's because the Democrats didn't make life better for poor, struggling, working people, and they didn't talk in a way that would persuade us to believe that they want to make life better for poor, struggling, working people. They want us to believe they want to make life better for poor, struggling, working people. But do they really? I don't think so. No one really buys that. By the way, hey, Art. Art, I see you said good morning. Art, give me a call. I haven't talked to you. 240-242-5646. So I did some more Googling, like, well, what's the evidence? Because, it's easy to say, as Spencer Kornhaber says, that it was the right-wing influencer ecosystem that helped elect Trump. But where's the beef? Where's the evidence? And honestly, it may well be in that article in The Atlantic, but I don't know, because I don't subscribe to The Atlantic and I'm not going to give them my money. But I am going to ask you to click like right now. That won't cost you any money. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do that as well. And again, that will not cost you any money, but it will certainly help me get my video in front of as many people as we can possibly get it. And I think that will make a difference. Well, I went to the Washington Post, which is, pretty much a centrist, neoliberal newspaper, much like in many ways its politics are pretty similar to The Atlantic. I didn't find anything in Washington Post. I might have missed it, but I didn't find anything in Washington Post that told me that it was the fault of the right-wing social media influencer ecosystem that Trump won. But what I did find is a lot of evidence that the Harris team viewed social media influencers as really important and spent a lot of time and energy courting such influencers, said influencers, apparently not very successfully. So here you see, before the election, social media influencers turned Harris backers rallying voters of color. So we do know Charlemagne the God, he's the morning show, I think they call it, or the morning show. He has that Angela Rye on it. They were totally cheerleading for Harris. So apparently, at least according to the Washington Post, before the election, those social media influencers were busy trying to turn out people for Harris. And apparently it wasn't that effective, as far as we can tell. besides Rogan, and we'll get to him in a little bit, as far as I know, and Rogan's not even all politics whatsoever. He does a lot of other, he hits on a lot of other topics besides politics. I think was he in like the professional wrestling world? I don't know anything really much about him. I don't watch his program. I don't really think he's that great. I don't find him that interesting. I don't have a problem with him. I think he seems like a relatively straight shooter. He did endorse Bernie. He seems like a populist. So I mean, I know he endorsed Trump. I wouldn't have endorsed Trump, but I'm not going to condemn him for that. It was two terrible choices. Well, you shouldn't have endorsed Trump, but leaving that aside, this is an incredibly powerful and influential podcast, right? Social media, isn't it? They're on YouTube. They don't have as big a footprint on YouTube as in other media. But I think these Pod Save people are among the biggest out there when it comes to politics of any political stripe. 1.5 million listeners an episode, okay? That's huge, huge. 1.5 million listeners. And that's more than you get, right, for CNN. More than MSNBC programs get. That's an explicitly Democrat, I won't say left wing, explicitly Democratic social media. So I don't know where this idea is that social media is this right-wing stronghold, because the Pod Save guys are far from that. Here's a guy. This guy is really, really big. I have no idea why. He's been on Pod Save America. He's huge. Look at this guy, Brian Tyler Cohen. 3.5 million subscribers. And his videos frequently get over 1 million hits. All Democratic. All Democrat. Another one I mentioned, I think the TYT is over 6 million. All Democratic, right? They were totally in for Kamala. Even though now they've sort of changed a little bit. So they're going to talk to Rogan, I think, and some other folks, some conservatives, but they're clearly on the Democratic side. Explicitly so. So I don't know where the idea that social media is this right-wing, censure. It's just false. It's just not the case. Yeah, it is true. Look, Cohen, 3.5 million subscribers. Yeah, I get it. Rogan dwarfs that, right? 18.9 million. But he's not conservative. He's a sort of a populist. It's just not fair to characterize this guy. And let me show this couple things real quick. So from Cohen, right? We're going to compare Cohen with is it the fault of or is it a failure on the left that Rogan has so many more subscribers than the explicitly left-wing or liberal, whatever you want to call them, podcasts and videographers and YouTubers? I don't think so. Rogan, again, is pretty much in the middle. He doesn't take sides. He will endorse, but he's pretty much of a down-the-middle guy. Let's compare that with this guy, Cohen. So I just want to, these are a couple of, I just sort of went into his YouTube, and I wanted to look at the names of some of his videos. So during the election, before the election, during the campaign, everything is pro-Harris. Look at the headlines. Trump finally, in big caps, like he never did before, responds to the challenge. Longtime Republicans drop brutal news on Trump about Kamala. So this guy, Cohen, is clearly, I don't want to say I'm a propagandist, but he's a Democratic podcaster. He's got over 3 million subscribers. Who's similar to that? TYT. They've got over 6. There's just no truth to the claim. And let me just get this up so you can see it because it's a little bit cut off. More from Cohen. Just these are some more headlines. Harris makes low-key brilliant all-caps move. Harris or Kamala outsmarts all-cap Trump with brilliant move. Kamala issues public challenge to Trump. So again, social media clearly pushing all the buttons it could. All the buttons it could for Harris. At least this guy. And again, let's compare that with Rogan. Let's look at some of Rogan's. They're totally anodyne. He's not showing support for anybody. He does have the names, right? So these are Joe Rogan. And this isn't cherry picked. I just went to the site and I just found, I didn't mix and match or try to put this video there. I just looked at the titles. There's no brilliant, there's nothing in caps. Yeah, I highlighted Donald Trump because he interviewed Donald Trump. Guess who he didn't interview? Kamala. Why not? She refused his invitation. If Joe Rogan Experience had interviewed Kamala Harris, it would have looked exactly like that, except it would have said Kamala Harris, not even in all caps, and it would have had a picture of her instead of Trump. That's all. This is not some kind of right wing or hard right or conservative site or pushing an agenda the way obviously Brian Tyler Cohen is. It's just a false argument. It wasn't social media. More, Joe Rogan. Okay, J.D. Vance. Guess who didn't go on his program? On Rogan's program, Tim Walz. That's it. And lots of those people, they're not even political. It's not social media that cost Harris the election. It was bad policies, bad campaigning, and incompetence. Incredibly poorly spent money. We'll get into that in just a moment, a little bit more of that. Because they spent a lot, they knew influencers mattered. They weren't that stupid that they didn't think it mattered. But they were too stupid or too afraid to go on Rogan. So who were the influencers? Well, this was, and I want to thank Sabby Sabs. I don't always talk about her program. I catch a lot of her videos. I learn a lot from them. So you should definitely check out Sabby Sabs. She talked about this before me, but this was so important. I really wanted to get into it. So this is from, I learned of this from her, but this is actually from the Current Affairs, which is Nathan J. Robinson. And I criticized Nathan J. Robinson for calling for people to vote for Harris because I disagree with that, but I give him a lot of credit for his coverage. So this is posted at Current Affairs, and Sabby centered this, which was right. Disbursements from the Harris campaign. You can see it. Harris for president, Harris for the people. So look at all this money. On this page alone, $250,000 to Good Influence, digital consultant, license fees. Who are Good Influence? Good Influence is influencers. A second page, because it wasn't enough to have one page of disbursements to Good Influence. And you think it's not that much money, right? Because they spent over $1 billion. But for a couple of podcasters, for a few months' work, over $600,000. I take it. I take it in a heartbeat. So who are the people in Good Influence? One of them is this guy, Too Raw, Too Real. The other, let me say, the first one, the bigger name from Good Influence is Brian Tyler Cohen. We saw his work, all those incredibly tendentious videos, right? He got paid for those. Brutal news on Trump. Brilliant move. Outsmarts. Kamala outsmarts. Public challenge. There's tons of these. These are just a tiny number of the videos that Brian Tyler Cohen did during the campaign for Harris. And he was getting paid. You saw the money that went to good influence, right? Good influence. So here's a video from Good. This is Good Influence's. This is going to be their website, right? So let's see if I can get that website up for you. Let me just see if I can get it. So I think this is going to do it for you. Let's see. So there's the good influence. Be a good influence. There he is, Brian Tyler Cohen. Look at him. Right there. And then it's just going to segue. And who's he interviewing? Kamala Harris. Oh my gosh. So I guess what that, because this is their website. This is the people that Harris paid money to. And there he is, over $600,000 to the good influence for what, a few months worth of incredibly loud videos that got a lot of hits. It's true. But you can't say, given that clearly he earned his money. But you can't say that social media influencers weren't taking the part of the Harris campaign. Heck, they were getting paid to do it. Another good influencer is this guy. Too Raw, Too Real Entertainment. This guy's like a splash. He's nothing compared to like the Rogans or the Tyler Cohens or the TYTs. Look at this, only 6.03K subscribers. So only a little over 6,000. I mean, I take it, right? I don't have that. I'm not even close to that. Or, whatever. Make all your jokes you want. But it's still pretty small potatoes, right? This guy was doing video after video calling for his viewers to support Harris. And he was doing it in the most obnoxious and nasty way possible. And when I say that, what are we talking about? He was wishing death on Bernie Sanders. Remember, Bernie was a latecomer. At first, he kept saying you should, Biden shouldn't step down. He called Tlaib and AOC. He kept used the B word over and over and over again because they weren't, in his view, sufficiently pro-Kamala. Tlaib never endorsed Kamala. So I don't know that he got money. We know Good Influence did. We know he's a good influencer. We know that the argument that it was social media influencers on the right who made a difference in this campaign is false. I mean, if they did, it wasn't because there aren't social media influencers on the left. It wasn't because the Harris campaign didn't spend a lot of money trying to get those influencers to support her. It's because they weren't credible. They weren't believable. Joe Rogan has cred. Joe Rogan didn't get paid. Joe Rogan endorsed Trump because Trump went on his program and Harris didn't. Joe Rogan went on, endorsed Trump. As far as I know, Trump answered some, he was there for a full hour. He answered every question. Harris refused to go on that program. So you want to blame the media influencer or you want to blame the candidate? I'm sure many of you would rather blame the influencer. But in this case, the only person who deserves the blame is the candidate Well, and those who anointed her.